Well, I'm Sister Mary Cecile Gunnelson, and I'm a sister of the Most Precious Blood of O'Fallon, Missouri. I did not go to Catholic school. I went to a small town public school. So the only way I knew sisters were catechism classes on Saturdays. But when I started thinking of becoming a sister, I talked to my pastor about it. His name was Father Miller Liley. And he said, I know just the community for you. He put me in the car and brought me 600 miles from Minnesota down to O'Fallon, Missouri, and said, these are the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood, and introduced me to this community.
I'm Sister Loretto, Maes. I'm a Sister of the Most Precious Blood. I have been for some 60 years. I went to high school at St. Elizabeth Academy, and that's what drew me to this congregation. You know, I said I never prayed to become a sister, but I prayed to do what God wanted me to do. When I was in my first year here at the Mother House, and we celebrated the Feast of Christ the King. This was before Vatican II, so we're going back. And most parishes had a 40 hours devotion throughout sometime through the year, you know, bringing the people together. And that 40 hours was continuous adoration of the Eucharist, etc. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, this is a wise 18 or 19-year-old saying, they know how to do it right here. You know, so all those things take root.
My name is Sister Mary Beth Kemper, and I'm a Sister of the Most Precious Blood in O'Fallon, Missouri. Well, I told my parents in first grade, after meeting Sister Mary Carmel as a teacher, that I wanted to be a sister. So people kind of held me to that, actually.
Our sisters, our foundation, you know, we were closely associated with the Benedictines in the beginning because we were founded in Steinerberg, Switzerland, and then the great abbey of the Benedictines in Einsiedeln was near, and the Benedictine fathers had contact with the sisters. And then in the 20th century, early 20th century, we had a chaplain, Monsignor Martin Hellriegel. He was a pioneer in liturgical reform. And he had the O'Fallon Mother House, the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood, you might say as a laboratory, explaining, etc. And the sisters imbibed this and expressed it in their art and in their teaching.
Monsignor Hellriegel, who was one of the founding fathers of the liturgical movement in the United States, was chaplain here for, I think, at least 25 years, if not longer. And it was during that time that our community really made a transition, I would say, from being a more devotional community to being a very liturgical community over a long period of time through many struggles, and you can about imagine. But we really were totally heart and soul a liturgical community. In some ways, art has always been a part of the community. My experience of it is through what I've learned about the ecclesiastical art that we did. And the sisters, when they first began doing embroidery, because it was embroidered work. The art that they did was much more realistic in those days. Lots of tiny little embroidered faces, lots of flowers. There's even the story that the sisters, now this was later on, but when they were doing their hand embroidery, and there would be a break, they'd go outside, they'd look at the flowers, they'd come in and try to put into, using their needle and thread, paint what they had seen outside. So that was the kind of style of art that the sisters were using for a long time. After Monsignor Hellriegel had been here, there was a movement towards using symbols rather than the realistic images. And Sister Hiltrudis, she just took symbols and ran with them, so to speak. That's why these windows, for example, are totally symbols. For us growing up in the community, we learned the meaning of the symbols and how to express our theological understanding, sometimes through using symbols. From the history of the Ecclesiastical Art Department, many beautiful, ornate, embroidered symbols, faces, that the sisters used to be able to do those just with their needle and thread, you know, and changing the colors could just make a beautiful face. It was amazing. But you can only tell one story with a realistic image, whereas with a symbol, you can evoke a myriad of stories.
I started doing art when I was in grade school, or maybe even before I started drawing. I was so happy when I entered the community and found out that I could do art, be an artist in the community. That was exciting for me and what I just longed to do. When I was in the novitiate, they had the tradition of making what we called Sunday cards. So it was just a small card with a design that related to the gospel or the biblical readings of that Sunday, that particular Sunday. I was one to get that job. And we picked up the symbols and symbolism because we were getting that also in our theology classes and formation in general when we were postulants and novices. I think from the beginning, after they knew that I could do some art, they kind of let me know that I would be joining the art department, the Ecclesiastical Art Department. Yeah. Most of them did embroidery work. Vestment embroidery was the main thing. I started designing banners right away, which in a way too was unfortunate because I was not very good at it. The silk screening itself is not that hard to learn, but to design good banners is another thing altogether. I would do various kinds of media. I didn't do a lot of painting until these later years.
In '92, I had come back here because I was elected to leadership. It was very obvious that we needed to find someone to take Sister Hiltrudis's place as she was aging and no longer able to to direct the Ecclesiastical Art Department. And so, long story short, when I looked at the situation, I said, I could do that, and I volunteered, knowing that someday, as things were looking for us in community, I would close it, which is what history showed. So in the course of doing that, I learned a lot just by seeing what she had done and working with the symbols myself. I've really taken the time to delve into each one of these windows and to be able to understand and see how that she combined all the different symbols together to tell a story. And that's just been a real gift to me to be able to do that. She also designed the angels in the tester, which hangs over the altar. She designed those and fired them in ceramic tile. Her master's was in metalwork, and so she actually made the grill, which now separates the former sanctuary from the body of the church. Where she told the story that she had made stencils of the stars that are up high and given them to the men who were painting. They repainted the whole chapel. And they looked at her, she says, they looked at me and they said, "Oh, sister, we might make a mistake. Would you do it?" Literally, she was up there on the ceiling painting stars. It kind of says what a woman she was, you know. Those were still the days of the long habits. So she made herself culottes that she could wear. We have one picture of her painting where the tabernacle is now.
I think ideas come from the Holy Spirit, really, always. It's wonderful just to be open to whatever images come to my mind. Creating art is a need, and I think all of us are creative in different ways, but, you know, I just happen to be lucky to be able to use art as that outlet. Yeah, it's wonderful to look back on all our sister artists and to see what we have accomplished. And, you know, who knows about the future. But right now for myself, I just want to respond to the community as we are now and what we are thinking about, praying about, and living, and how I can express that in ways that will somehow be helpful to the community.
I'd like to preserve the story. I think stories speak to future generations, and the story I've kind of shared with you about how this came to be, what Sister did to develop it. I'm hoping that that story can get preserved. And I'm hoping that however this chapel is used in the future, the art can be preserved as much as possible intact.
I think all religious congregations, you know, have tried to manifest that God is beauty. I worked, if you can call it a committee, we were 3 who worked on putting together a legacy statement for our congregation. We devoted time to talking about this. And, you know, and so all the ideas are, not ideas, but desires and statements of the sisters were compiled, and 3 of us were given the task of writing a one-page statement. And we were able to do that. We came up with a legacy statement, which includes worship and art and the liturgy in it. It was positive from the beginning. And we worked at it, and we were able to express what we thought, who we are, what we want to leave, what we were involved in, who we touched, who touched us. And so after the opening paragraph, which talks about who we are, our charism, reconciliation, hospitality, presence, meeting the needs of others. We talk about that as a community, we have focused, our worship has focused on the Eucharist as Jesus' greatest gift. And that we have strived in our living and in our being, doing, to express that. And we say that in some form or another, every aspect of our work has been informed by the liturgy, by our participation in the liturgy. Every congregation has a story of people who responded to a call, wanted to follow Jesus, and have different expressions of just because of the people who they are. And so I'd like to see it as that we're part of a mosaic. We're one of those tassels that form the huge family of God. We don't know what the future is, but the substance is what we hope to impart, That's important. Forms change. The gospel doesn't. And we're called to share it in the ways that are meant to be shared today. The most important thing is not material signs but that the love which we have been able, God's love which we have been able to share, that's the legacy. And that we would hope that those whose lives we have touched with God's love would touch other lives with that same love. So that's very briefly and inadequately, that's our legacy. Maybe people wouldn't mention it just simply, but that it would be, look how they love one another.